Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are listening from. Welcome back to the Podium Podcast, where today, of course, it is the 2025 Bahrain Grand Prix preview. Yeah, a bit of a mouthful that one, but I'm still working on it. Well, boy, do we have a lot to talk about going into Bahrain. It should be a good race, but a lot of key talking points we need to get through first after what was maybe a little bit of a slow-burning Japanese Grand Prix. So, as we do on the channel, before we get into, the 2025 Bahrain Grand Prix, we will of course talk about the 2024 Bahrain Grand Prix, in which Max Verstappen took the first win of the season as Red Bull made it 1-2 with Carlos Sainz in third. Probably, if you look back, 2024 Bahrain Grand Prix was probably one of the worst races of last year. Not much happened, no retirements, no safety cars, no virtual safety cars or red flags. It was as boring you could have got last year. Of course, Red Bull started the year off with bounds of performance and a great amount of confidence in the car. More on Max Verstappen side of the garage, but still, Sergio Perez at the time was only a good 8 or 9 seconds off Verstappen in the race and only about 4/10 off in qualifying to still make it. I think Checo qualified P4 or P5, but Verstappen was the only driver around Bahrain to make it a Grand Slam last year. But the main talking points from last year is that obviously the Christian Horner embargo, with him supposedly still messaging, in a little bit of a erotic way, you could put it, to one of the co-workers, and apparently he did some not nice things, and it's still under investigation. I think that they are settled. I'm not too sure yet, but as it is part of British law in the courts or something like that, we as the British press cannot access the results of it. Anyway, I'm not too sure about the ins and outs. But yeah, it was the start of the season Bahrain, whereas this year it is different, which will nicely move us onto the talking points going into this weekend. The first one, I think, which is going to be one which is it'll be a title decider, and people do count it out, but coming into Bahrain, it is in the middle of a desert, which means that is going to be very, very warm. Does that mean that the car's performances across the grid will differ, will change? 100%. We've only had 3 Grand Prix this year in fairly cold or wet or windy conditions. You look at Australia was complete rain. You look at China was still a bit overcast and a bit cold. And you look at Japan, and Japan wasn't as warm as it normally is. You come to Bahrain, it's a completely different story. Highs of 30 degrees, no cloud cover. This will be a really, really big, I suppose, moment for the teams to see if they can cope in warmer conditions, because as we get on to summer and we get on to more Middle Eastern races, the temperature goes up around the races. So I think that the number one team which you have to look out for this weekend is Mercedes. Last year we saw that in colder conditions they can thrive compared to other teams. You look at places like Las Vegas where it was fairly chilly and they took pole and they won. You look at places like Bahrain last year where they did seem to struggle. Does that mean that they can struggle this season, this time in Bahrain? Maybe, maybe not. For me personally, Mercedes has started the year off second best with the second best car. I think they can continue this, but if they manage to, get the same sort of result as they have done in the past 3 or so races, then why not? It also gives the question, have they changed it around? In hotter conditions, can they work better? Have they fixed something? Because coming into the season, that was one of their aims that they were trying to achieve in, making the car all round better for the drivers and better performing across the season. So it is going to be interesting to see. Does this also affect McLaren? McLaren weren't the best in Bahrain last year. Does that mean it's going to happen the same? We are not sure, but it's definitely something to look out for. Second point, testing circuit. This means that FP1 will be full of rookies, and it also means, hopefully this is not the case, but it does seem time in, time out that the testing circuit for that season normally doesn't produce the best racing due to the fact that many of the drivers don't really make mistakes around there because they just know the track way too well. It also means that the teams have got perfect setups for Bahrain, so that means no kind of jeopardy in that sort of sense. So the only thing we do get out of it is that there are plenty of rookies going into FP1. Frederick Vesti will be replacing George Russell in the Mercedes, as Felipe Drugovich will be replacing Alonso. Browning will replace Sainz. Rio Hirawaka, who was doing FP1 for Alpine last time out in Japan on home soil, will be replacing Oliver Behrman in a Haas. So it's almost kind of two different teams in 1 week for the Japanese reserve driver. And I think it's Beganovic will replace Leclerc. So hopefully this means that, they've got an hour less of testing for some of them. But I mean, for the teams, this is an easy FP1 session that they can get out the way. I think they have to do 2 for each driver, so this one is fairly easy because the drivers know this track very well. You also look at places like Mexico and Austin and Abu Dhabi, which will also be very good for F1 rookies, just to get them out there, have their hour, whilst the drivers pretty much are already confident in setup and around the track. If we look at also this is something which is interesting, but the last 4 races, if you include the sprint races, have been won by the pole sitter. Now, it does beg the question, going into Bahrain, will the same feat happen again? Quite possibly, yes. Australia was close, but, I mean, China was still, Piastri was miles ahead, Lewis was miles ahead, and in Japan, it seemed that Verstappen had it under control. It does seem that if you manage to get your car in clean air, that the field is so close that tenth of a second or 0.2 of a second that you could gain in clean air can make or break your race. And it does seem that pole position is extremely vital, more vital than I think I've ever seen in Formula 1. Just because the field is so close, and as the cars get bigger, it becomes more difficult to overtake. Now, around Bahrain, I mean, we can get into circuit check right now because it kind of links. But Bahrain is still not too bad for overtaking. It does have 3 DRS zones on the main straight, the back straight, and the run up the hill from turn 3 to turn 4. There is a lot of overtaking places. I mean, I think there was around 40 odd overtakes last year in Bahrain, which is not a bad amount. Hopefully, it means that it would be better this year. It does seem that a DRS train can form around there, but I mean, strategy is one thing that is going to be maybe a little bit of a unpredictability. However, I do say that the teams already have that all locked down. The only thing that can really, switch things up is a VSC or a safety car or red flag, which obviously can still happen around the Grand Prix. So they'll be thinking, oh, the Podium Podcast said that, it's going to be a boring Grand Prix, so I'm not going to watch it. Do watch it because it will still be monumental for the title fight. Tyre compounds wise, it will be the C1, C2, C3, the hardest of the Pirelli range. Similar to Japan last weekend, tyre deg is still quite a problem around here. So yeah, that's why the 2-stop can work. But we saw in Japan, no one tried the 2-stop no one did actually, except for Lance Stroll, who finished a lap down compared to everyone else. So I don't think the 2-stop is very ideal for a number of the drivers. We look at the weather. It's sunny, as you would expect around a desert. Friday, is highs of 32, as in the nighttime it will get to around the 25, 26 degree mark. Similar to Saturday, pretty much the same, and Sunday it is 24 degrees. Well, it's supposed to be 24 degrees around a race time in the evening, which means it'll be nice and toasty for the drivers. It might be a bit of a problem for FP1 and FP3, considering how hot it will be. But for the evening, it is quite nice, hopefully, for the drivers. Maybe a little bit warm on the warmer side. Well, this is the best part of the podcast episode where we do the predictions for the Grand Prix. Obviously, we do it qualifying race and the middle of the race, whilst we always do the biggest good surprise, the biggest flop, and a crazy prediction, which of course is always one which I can see how washed I am. Qualifying, let's go for qualifying, and this might turn heads, but qualifying gone for P5, Oscar Piastri, while Leclerc is in P4. Why? I just don't think the McLarens will be as quick as they can be around here. There's just something in the back of my mind telling me that they won't be overly quick. They don't always seem the quickest around Bahrain. You look at the last couple of Grand Prix and they've been absolutely abysmal to where they finished the season. So yes, in hindsight, it was the first race of the season, but regardless, it still has to be said. You start the season as you mean to go on, so I don't think they'll be doing the best. George Russell, I've put in P3. I think he's great in qualifying. I think he will be, still a contender for pole. However, the top two of, second place is obviously, I'm going to go for Lando Norris, whilst Max Verstappen will take his second pole of the season. Yes, season. I just think Verstappen will have the edge around Lando coming into this weekend. I think that pole will also be quite useful for the win, as we'll see. As for P5 in the race, I've gone for Charles Leclerc. I think he will drop a place down. I think Ferrari will do Ferrari things, but I will think that they will, definitely not take some decent points, but not the best. As I think Piastri will be able to maximize some sort of strategy and finish a place ahead of where he qualified in P4. Can't be the same for his teammate though, because I think his teammate Lando Norris will finish third on the podium, as George Russell will finish second, and I think it will be almost 4 from 4 for Grand Prix. He put it 5 for 5 from races altogether. Max Verstappen will take his pole and convert it to a solid but deserved race win. I think the Red Bulls will look strong around here. They always have, regardless of era. It's one of those circuits that I think that they just suit their car really, really well. And I think Max will be able to maximize the most coming into this. But yeah, I think that they will just be able to win. Not by a lot. I think, of course, it'll still be close. I mean, the cars are all quite close to one another. And I think coming off a weekend in which he managed to beat both McLarens, I think he will be very happy with a race win around Bahrain. Now, you look at the middle of the race, I'm going to say just 1 to 5. Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc, Antonelli and Russell. Those are all just based off vibes, nothing else to do with it. But we go to biggest good surprise. Now, this is an interesting one because I think, some people will be a bit shocked by this. But Yuki Tsunoda will be my biggest good surprise for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Why? Because I think that he'll be able to come back from a difficult weekend. He does like this track. It is where he got his first points on debut, so he does like it. He's had testing around here in the V-Carb, so he knows the track well, and I think he'll be happy with a good points performance to finish in the points, and I think it will be something that he could take into Saudi Arabia with a good amount of confidence. Biggest flop? God, who would I say is biggest flop? I think, this one's also going to turn heads, but Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton will be my biggest flop due to the fact that he has not been performing well this season compared to his teammate. That goes without saying. And I just don't think Bahrain will be a good race for him. I think that he will have a poor qualifying. And as we've seen, qualifying is very, very vital in 2025. So I think it'll be maybe one to forget for the 7-time world champion. Craziest prediction? I'm going to say that a rookie does cause a red flag in FP1. which is crazy because we haven't had many red flags in FP1, and I think a rookie will cause it. I'm counting the rookies obviously in F1 and the rookies that have taken the FP1 session from another driver. So I think that will wrap up the 2025 Bahrain Grand Prix preview. Make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you for listening or watching, and have a simply lovely day. Goodbye.